Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Niche Cast. This is Diggly Dude Dad, Dr. Peptide Panther, Mr. Slippers, serving up a doosra to your front door, going through the gate and talking some Plunket Shield cricket with the wobbly wild card. We'll chuck it up to the naughty north of Aotearoa and say a big kia ora to the wild card.
Yeah, how's it going?
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Yeah, pretty good. Other than my ankle is absolutely fucked. Got a hockey ball to the inside of the ankle and about 13 days removed from receiving hockey ball to the ankle, and it's still kind of fucked. So just dealing with that at the moment, but still a bit of swelling, still a bit of bruising, and to be honest, it just feels like all the bones inside my ankle on the the inside portion of my ankle, not like inside the skin, which is obvious, but the inside portion of my ankle just feels shattered. So no idea what's happening down there. So we'll just see how that goes.
Just like dust held together in the frame of what used to be ankle bones.
None of which showed up on the X-ray I got. There was no damage on the X-ray, so it's just kind of like, what the fuck?
So what is it? Just like, is it just severe bruising or is it crushed?
Yeah, apparently. Like it's still the same swollen it was when I got the X-ray and shit, but just as sore. Like it's still just as sore, but there's no damage apparently. So
yeah, so it goes, I suppose. You just got to ride through it, eh? I played football all bloody day. I think I might have mentioned this on one of the other podcasts. Got all sunburnt and still peeling actually from that 2 weeks ago. But the main thing that I got from that, which is semi-related to that, was my old footy boots, which I hadn't worn for about a year, and pulling them out of the closet, chucking them on without really thinking about it. I'm just like, oh, I've got some boots good to go, no worries. I don't need to go buy any new ones. But maybe I should have soaked them or something, because they were like crusty. They've been unused for so long. But I got like some severe blisters on each of my pinky toes, and the thing is that's like a 2-day thing. You know, it was real sore the next day. The day after that, it was real sore. The day after that, it was starting to heal. But the weird thing I'm sure it's completely related, is for that entire rest of the week, because I was walking weird because I was, limping on both feet from my toes being sore. I then had sore hips the next day, and because my hips were sore, then my knees and my heels started getting sore. Like I'm sure, like I just had this domino effect of little niggling injuries that all followed on from the same thing, which I'm 100% convinced all stemmed from the same initial thing, which is that I should have soaked my boots overnight beforehand.
The joys of blisters and sunburn, I guess, for up in the naughty north. We'll slide into Plunket Shield Cricket Wildcard, where only 2 games went down. So there's no play down in Otago between Otago Volts and Auckland Aces. But we did get full games and full results between Wellington Firebirds and Canterbury. Wellington Firebirds won that game in Wellington by 44 runs, and then Northern Districts Knights hosted Central District Stags in Mount Maunganui, Tauranga, and the Stags grabbed a 74-run win. So let's start with the Wellington Firebirds versus Canterbury Wildcard. Do you just want to scroll through these little scorecards for us as you always do, and then we'll discuss some going-ons there.
Yeah, I got you there, mate. Wellington Firebirds, does it say who won the toss on these things? Yes, Canterbury won the toss and decided to bowl, chucked the Firebirds in, and they had them 54 for 4 before lunch, scoring at only a little bit over 2 runs and over. Everything looking, relatively sweet there, and then all of a sudden Devon Conway walks to the wicket. Next thing they had, they went from 54 for 4 to 415 for 6 at the end of the day. They ended up on 525 for 7 declared in just 118 overs. Yeah, it was something absolutely special from old mate Devon Conway. 327 not out. He hit 48 fours, 5 sixes, which is 53 boundaries, the most anyone's ever hit in a New Zealand domestic cricket game. He then chipped in with I think it was 66 in the second innings, which took him to 393 runs for the game, which is a new New Zealand first-class record for aggregate runs in a game as well, which beat a record that had stood since the 1952-53 season for Mr. Bert Sutcliffe, one of the greatest to ever do it. He scored 385 in one game there, which I think is, in fact, I know is still the highest first-class score by a New Zealander to this day. So if you've beaten Bert Sutcliffe, you're doing all right there. He was ably helped by little cameos, 45 for Malcolm Nofal, Peter Younghusband got 36, and Jamie Gibson, 65. It was his first time fast 50. I had to look at this because to see, because I was just checking if it was his highest first class score, coming in at 8, which it duly was. He played one game in 2016, and this was his first class game since then, just his second overall. So yeah, good game for him. He also smacked 44 not out, I think, in the second innings with a was it 5 sixes or 4 sixes or something like that. Anyway, Canterbury struggled with the ball. A couple figures that stand out. Ed Nuttall with 1 for 115 from 18 overs. That's 6.39. And is it Andrew Hazeldine with 1 for 125 from 13 overs. 9.6s. Not ideal. Canterbury actually responded quite nicely, though. They got to 415 for 9, led by the esteemed Tom Latham with 224. No one else passed 50, but they got a few other decent starts. Wellington declared at 247 for 6 in their second innings, giving Canterbury a target of 358. 3 wickets for Will Williams in that one. 50s for 66 for Conway. He's the only one to pass 50. Gibson hit 43 not out, it was, with 4 sixes. And Canterbury got a lot of starts, but no one really went on and took them too close. They only lost by 44 runs. They got relatively close there, but Malcolm Nofal with 4 for 100, he has taken a lot of wickets early on in this season. So yeah, another solid win from the Wellington Firebirds. So we're looking excellent through these first 2 games. Where do we want to start? Do we want to start with I guess Devon Conway is probably the fella to start with, September 2020 till he becomes eligible for New Zealand. Might want to mark that one on the calendars.
Devon Conway, 4 innings, 327, and then also 2 half centuries. So on 3 of his 4 Plunket Shield innings this season, he's scored a few runs. Devon Conway, the whole discussion around Devon Conway, like in a more mainstream sense, is where does he fit into the Black Caps team? Because, like, I understand that Devon Conway is the hottest thing in New Zealand cricket right now, and this is coming from someone who said that Devon Conway was the best overall batsman in domestic cricket last summer. So, like, I am leading the Devon Conway kind of fandom here, and illuminating many people to what Devon Conway has been doing over a decent period of time. But it's just it's so cluttered in and around the Black Caps in terms of up and coming promising batsmen, because we're looking at a test team where Will Young's next in line and he thoroughly deserves his opportunity. There's Tom Bruce has made a strong return to Central Districts as well in the other game we're going to talk about. So there's no shortage of talented batsmen in that group around the Black Caps, like who could be moving into Black Caps contention soon enough. And you mentioned the September 2020, I think, is the eligibility date. I can almost guarantee that nothing is going to be as it is now by that time. So everyone's just kind of assuming that everything will stay the same, and then come September 2020, Devon Conway is going to be the dude who blasts his way into the Black Caps. What I'm saying is, as a leader of the Devon Conway fandom, I'm saying players come in and out of form. Other players are going to rise up and take their opportunities. So it's just something absolutely ridiculous to ponder what's going to happen in a year's time with regards to the Black Caps situation around Devon Conway. Like, Devon Conway is just doing what he needs to do right now, and other things could open up. But a lot of people talking about the Black Caps context in a year's time. Who the fuck knows what's going to be happening with the Black Caps in a year's time, wildcard?
Yeah, I have two thoughts specifically on him and the Black Caps. I think, well, let's make that three thoughts, because the first one is that looking around the three formats, clearly, like, September 2020 is about a month before the 2020 World Cup starts. And that's really late to push someone into a tournament which, with all the 2020 internationals they're playing between now and then, they're clearly taking, a relatively significant focus on that tournament, as they should. You want to go out and win every tournament you play in. There, hey, look, we've got a lot of airtime on this podcast out of Black Caps and selection planning and that kind of stuff. So you never quite know, but if it seems like to me, if there is an opening in the Black Caps, that is the 2020 team is that one. But do you push them into a 2020 World Cup so soon, and then afterwards, if you don't, probably not going to play that many. We won't be playing 2020 internationals at the same rate afterwards. So that brings me to my second thought, which is that, where does he fit in with the Black Caps hypothetically? Well, there's the possibility that I don't think a lot of people have considered when they talk about this, because it's obviously coming on the back of the fact that this dude has scored 500 runs in 2 Plunket Shield games. And I'm looking at the things. If it wasn't for Tom Latham, he'd have more than double anybody else in the entire competition through the first 2 rounds. Maybe there's a point to be made that perhaps he doesn't fit into one of the Black Caps teams. Like, maybe they're just really settled and strong at this point in time. We got the best top 6, arguably best top 7 that the Test team has ever had. We've got a one-day team that's coming off making back-to-back World Cup finals. We've got a 2020 team that is getting sharply in focus now ahead of a tournament which he's only just going to be eligible ahead of. Like, maybe he just doesn't fit into the Black Caps at this time and would have to wait for an opportunistic moment like Will Young has done, and Will Young can tell you that might take a while. You might have to be sitting on the fringes just waiting for that call out for a little longer than you expect, despite how much you may or may not deserve it. And then the third point is the idea that the consensus seems to be of, well, if he does fit into the Black Caps, just wait till Ross Taylor retires. And yeah, we're both card-carrying members of the Ross Taylor fan club here. My theory is I think Ross Taylor's might play through to the next World Cup. I don't know that he's going to retire in the next year or two. September 2020, I think he'll certainly still be playing, and I suspect he might still be playing in 2022 as well. I don't think people should rush to the idea that Ross Taylor might be about to retire. He's living a bloody good life right now, playing great cricket and scoring a lot of runs. I think he's doing all right with himself right now, and I don't think he's in any hurry to, shift things up.
I'm definitely of the belief that Ross Taylor's going to be playing a lot more cricket, and I bloody love it.
Savour it, eh? Savour it.
And of course, with the T20 team, we won't go too off track here, but with the T20 Black Caps team, Kane Williamson walks into that lineup. So if Colin Munro struggles, you're just going to replace him with Kane Williamson. Like, that's any opening in the T20 team that we are seeing right now where Devon Conway could come in or whatever, Kane Williamson is the better option. So it's like, just with regards to, and that goes for any other T20 selection, we have to remember that during this England series, Kane Williamson isn't playing, and Kane Williamson tends to go all right as a T20 opener. With that in mind, do we really need to go too deep into Tom Latham's work? We know he's a fantastic opening batsman, and as a Black Caps opener, Tom Latham is doing what we would hope he does in Plunket Shield cricket. So I'm not sure if you got anything else to add there with regards to Tom Latham, wildcard.
Well, I just want to make sure everybody realises that Tom Latham is not just a great New Zealand Test batsman, he is one of the best Test openers in the world right now and has been for a year or two. He is well and truly established himself at the top in terms of Test match openers around the planet for any country. He is a really, really, really good Test match and by extension first-class batsman.
Roger that. The best bowler for Plunket Shield cricket right now is Malcolm Nofal, left-arm spinner. He's got 13 wickets at an average of 17. And just an interesting note here, Wildcard, I wrote about this today in my latest episode of Domestic Cricket Daily. 3 of the top 4 bowlers are Kiwi-Africans. So you got Malcolm Nofal with Wellington, Neil Wagner with the Knights, and then Willem Luddick with Central District Stags. And 2 of the top 3 batsmen are Kiwi-Africans, Devon Conway and Brad Schmulian with Central District. So, and that's just the guys at the top of the rankings. There is absolutely no shortage of Kiwi-Africans in domestic cricket, and it's just growing and growing and growing. With regards to Malcolm Nofal, he took 2 wickets in the first innings for Wellington, and then he came back with 4 wickets in the second innings. Interestingly here, I wrote about this as well, Todd Astle hit 5 fours and 2 sixes, all of which came out Malcolm Nofal's bowling in the second innings. Canterbury were chasing that 358 run mark to win. And then Nofal dismissed Todd Astle and gave him a good old stare down, which I definitely noticed and appreciated. But yeah, it's a bit of a surprise here that Malcolm Nofal is the leading wicket taker, mainly because he's operating as Wellington's number 1 spinner. There's no Jaden Patel for Wellington Firebirds. He is coaching with England, so that opens up a couple of spin overs for the Firebirds. But then also in this game, there was no Rachin Ravindra. He was out of action, so Malcolm Nofal bowled 19 overs in the second innings, and he bowled 28.2 overs in the first innings. He is, let me just check his total overs. He's bowled 65 overs in 2 games, and he is being relied on. Like last summer and earlier, glimpses at Malcolm Nofal were like, he's a batsman who can bowl a bit of spin. He's not a bad option as a second spinner or third spinner bowling a few overs. This season, he is the number 1 spinner for Wellington, because of that Jaden Patel situation primarily. So Malcolm Nofal is shining with greater opportunities with the Wellington Firebirds, and him and Logan Van Beek kind of carried that bowling attack. There were fantastic contributions throughout the bowling attack, bowling performance from the Wellington Firebirds, but I'm saying that because there was no Hamish Bennett, there was no Ollie Newton, no Ben Sears, no Jaden Patel in these opening rounds either. And so you need those frontline bowlers, whether it's Logan Van Beek or Malcolm Nofal, to lead the way for other bowlers. And especially when you're rolling with that second string kind of bowling attack that the Wellington Firebirds have. And I set that up to flow into a discussion about the Canterbury bowlers who I talked to you about before, Wildcard. And I'm just intrigued how they're going to go. I did the math this morning, and I believe they have taken 19 wickets of a possible 40 wickets. Now, they only bowled the 1 innings against Northern District, so you've got to take this with a grain of salt because they're missing out on a full innings there, but they couldn't bowl the Knights out. Granted, Black Caps batting lineup again, so a couple of grains of salt coming through here, but just straight up and down, they've taken 19 wickets of a possible 40 wickets they could take. And Wellington took 19 wickets to win this game. So I am building this picture in my head of the Canterbury bowling attack just being a little bit down buzz at the moment. And to throw it back to you, Wildcard, I just want to chuck up some stats here. Matt Henry averaging 56.25 with the ball. And Todd Astle is still averaging well over 80. 88. So those are your 2 best bowlers, averaging 56 and 88. Best bowlers in terms of Black Caps, Will Williams is their best bowler so far, 5 wickets at 30.2. So what do you make of those numbers, especially for Matt Henry and Todd Astle, Wildcard, in Plunket Shield, where they should be kind of dominating? We'd expect, especially Matt Henry. Matt Henry dominates anytime he comes back into Plunket Shield cricket. And Todd Astle's got a fairly comprehensive record of performing well at this level also. So what are your views on that situation?
Yeah, well, first of all, respect to Will Williams's parents for having the last name Williams and naming their son William. It's shades of old, Gary and Phil Neville, and I forget what the sister's name is, who played netball for England. That whole family. Their dad's name was Neville, which, yeah, beautiful. Um, where are we? Malcolm Nofal, actually, while you were saying that before, he's taken 13 wickets at an average of 17 this in the 2 games so far this season. Before that, he'd played 17 games and had taken 14 career wickets in first class matches. So, yeah, old mate's on the breakthrough there. Well, I suppose it's the same as what we were saying about Otago's batsmen last week with this Canterbury bowling lineup. It's like if your best players aren't performing, if your most experienced players aren't performing, it's kind of hard to then be able to get results. You need the top talent to be leading the way, and Matt Henry just 4 wickets from 68 overs hasn't quite been able to do that so far, and Todd Astle just plain has taken a little bit of heat, but they're not the ones who were getting pummeled by Devon Conway. It was Nuttall and Hazeldine. So, like, your top guys aren't taking wickets. Your next guys up are getting smashed. Will Williams is doing all right. Took 3 for in the second innings in that game, but yeah, it's that I would suggest those are signs for concern for Canterbury's fate throughout this Plunket Shield season. I'm not sure that's something you can really I almost you can probably overcome a sketchy batting lineup. They actually have a half decent one there. Like Cole McConkey scored some runs. They've had hundreds from both Henry Nicholls and Tom Latham dropping in from Black Caps duty. So that's nice, but if you don't take wickets, you don't win games of cricket. And for all the thing about like Devon Conway leading the way for Wellington are also taking wickets, and they have the top wicket taker in the competition so far. So that is, I would suggest, a significant reason for concern for Canterbury.
Indeed. Shall we move over to the Northern Districts Knights versus Central Districts Stags game here, Wildcard?
Yeah, shall we? Just first, I want to say that in that last game, I added this up because I was wondering. I have no idea if this is a record. I have no idea if this is some kind of relevant statistic at all. But there were exactly 1,500 runs scored in that Wellington-Canterbury game. Exactly 1,500 runs. And there was still a result, which seems like the most astounding part of all. Is that a team won in a game where there were 1,500 runs. Where Northern Districts versus Central Stags is the next one. Northern Districts won the toss. They decided to bowl. The Stags then put up 371 in their first innings, led by a 9th first-class century for Mr. George Worker. He got 130, ably supported by Brad Schmulian with 60 and Tom Bruce with 71 not out. Tail could have done a little bit more wagging there, just looking at that, but Brett Randall and Neil Wagner with 3 wickets each. Northern responded, getting bowled out for 202, which was actually kind of decent under the circumstances because they were 127 for 8 when Neil Wagner got out. Then we have Mr. Trent Boult, of all people, walking to the crease. He batted his way to a cheeky little 44. Brett Randall also got 56. 202 all out there. Seth Rance leading the way with 3 for 50 for CD. CD responded by only scoring 204 themselves. Trent Boult with 4 for 68. Obviously, that whole thing about when a bowler comes to the crease and scores some runs with the bat, and then they say, well, that'll give them confidence when they get the ball back in their hand. Well, apparently that worked for Trent Boult because there he was slicing through the top order too of that Central Stags batting lineup in the second innings. They were Ben Smith scored 50, and Tom Bruce with his second score above 50 of the match. He got 60. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players out in single figures though, so didn't set the biggest target, but banked on that first innings. They, Northern still had to score 374 to win, which is a tough ask. They got to 299. Schmulian himself, continuing his nice little start to the season, he got 4 wickets in the second innings there. Barrett Popley with 87, And Joe Carter with 55 gave Northern a little bit of hope for a while there, but yeah, no, they Trent Boult couldn't repeat the dose in the second innings with the bat, and the Stags won that one by 74 runs, Doc.
Couple of very solid performers in this game. Who tickles your fancy the most here? Was it the Black Caps bowlers, Trent Boult, Neil Wagner taking lots of wickets, maybe George Worker getting back into the flow of runs? A couple of 50-plus scores there from Central District's batsmen. Barrett Popley coming back into runs after a bit of a run-scoring abyss for him. Who tickles your toes the most from that game there, Wildcat?
Yeah, there's a few little options, aren't there? Like a number of guys, no one did anything of a Devon Conway level, but a number of guys did some pretty, relevant things that probably were either expected of them in the terms of the Black Caps thing, or guys like Barrett Popley just like required of them. He didn't have the best season last year. He didn't play the first game, did he? He comes in here, scores 87 in the second innings. Lovely little contribution by him. I suppose statistically the best performer, well, apart from the absolute delight it must have been to watch Trent Boult score 44, George Worker with 130 is pretty significant. But I'm sneakily leaning towards Tom Bruce, who, add him up, scored 131 runs for the match, 71 not out and 60. He also, I believe, didn't play the first game, coming in for Ross Taylor, I suppose you could say. So that for a guy who, both those guys actually, maybe you can't really split them because you're both talking about guys who are on that sort of fringe of Black Cap selection. They've been around for a little while doing good things at this level and pushing for honours beyond this. And those, we're talking about how much Devon Conway might have to wait to get an opportunity. These guys are in the same boat. They've been waiting for a couple of years, but keep on knocking at the door. Keep scoring runs. You keep knocking at the door. Eventually, someone answers.
As we said last time, Tom Bruce is one of these dudes who is
absolutely
all about first-class cricket. He's got an average of 44.48 in 41 first-class games, which is an absolute kind of an abundance of runs, an abundance of games for Tom Bruce. Definitely slept on as a long-form cricketer. I think Tom Bruce has more upside at this point than George Worker.
Agreed, yep.
George Worker, it just doesn't seem like it's going to work out for George Worker, unfortunately. We'd definitely like to see him get steady opportunities with the Black Caps, but for whatever reason they haven't come. And Tom Bruce is batting in that middle order, kind of just feels like he's got a bit more upside moving forward. And just chucking up some Brad Schmulian details here. Career average, batting average of 40. Bowling average here, Wildcard, of 23.75 with his leg spinners.
There you go.
He took 4 wickets in that second innings to kind of steal the game away from the Knights. He dismissed Henry Cooper after Cooper had faced 124 balls, set himself up. He dismissed BJ Watling after Watling had faced 88 balls. And he also dismissed Peter Bocock. And then he took the final wicket of Neil Wagner. And Brad Schmulian, when he took those wickets of Henry Cooper, BJ Watling, those kind of wickets in that innings, the game was in the balance a bit by the looks of the scorecard. So Brad Schmulian came in, hard leg spinners, and did a mad thing. So Brad Schmulian is out here putting up big numbers, whether with the bat, whether with the ball, and, the Niggly Niche cast just highlighting some Brad Schmulian love.
Brad Schmulian scored I learnt this week, he scored a double 100 on his first-class debut.
He certainly did, and when you look at that Stags batting lineup, I talk about this a bit in my team's wrap episode of the Niche cast, because Brad Schmulian, for a bloke who averages 40 and can obviously bowl a bit with his leggies as well, does he fit into a Stags first 11? If you got a Stags first 11, not with their kind of test Black Cap, so basically without Ross Taylor, you're still going to have George Worker, Greg Hay, Will Young, Tom Bruce. That's your top 4. Dane Cleaver's always going to be there as the wicketkeeper batsman. So I'm not sure where Brad Schmulian like fits in to a Stags first 11. Especially if you got a full contingent of bowlers like the likes of Ben Wheeler, Doug Bracewell, Adam Milne can all bat 6, 7, 8. Ben Smith is currently batting number 3 at the moment. He hit 52 for the Stags in their second innings alongside Tom Bruce with 50 plus scores in the second innings. So maybe Ben Smith is kind of taking his opportunity as well. So point being that the Stags batting lineup, and we know they have heaps of black caps. We know, shout out to the Stags and shout out to the Firebirds because they basically have currently second string bowling attacks and they just won games. I won't go into depth about the new players because I talked about it in the team list, but the Firebirds gave debut to Michael Snedden. I think it's Jamie Gibson was also playing. I think it might have been his debut.
Second game for Jamie
second
Gibson.
Game. So
he was
yeah,
the dude I was saying before. Scored. He played 3 years ago, hadn't played since, and then he got his first 50.
Yeah, so they come in for the likes of Hamish Bennett and Ollie Newton, who are frontline seamers. Central Stags, Ray Toole comes out of nowhere. Jared Mackay comes out of nowhere, and they're just playing Plunket Shield cricket because they have an injury-ravaged seam attack, bowling attack, much like the Firebirds, but these are the teams that won. So shout out to them for their depth and their confidence in their depth. And then with the batting, like, someone's going to miss out. Ben Smith or Brad Schmulian. Someone's going to miss out there, and they are both putting up runs, so it's going to be very interesting to just watch that situation moving forward.
Yeah, Michael Snedden, who you mentioned there, seamer for Wellington, made his debut. He is the son of Martin Snedden. He is the grandson of Warwick Snedden. He is the great-grandson of Nessie Snedden. 4 generations of first-class cricketers there, which they reckon on Cricinfo anyway. That is the first time that's ever happened in a New Zealand family. Although I kind of contest that because it's like, how straight does the family tree line have to be? It sort of seems like maybe that is something you could like bend with first cousins half removed and whatever, however all those things work. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's something you can like say definitively, but still, at the very least, he's Martin Snedden's son. So the Boomers will all be excited about that one.
I think he was with Auckland for a period, and he was also with Otago for a period. So he's been around the scene. Like, I don't know if he's going to have like a long kind of domestic cricket career, and he seemed to get this opportunity through those injuries. So it will be interesting to see if we can graduate from having 4 generations play domestic cricket to having 4 generations of high quality domestic cricketers and black caps. But yeah, shout out to Mr. Snedden. But that couple of those, debuts just generally for the Stags and Firebirds definitely came through injury situations, and things will definitely be moving around in the coming rounds. Anything else from that Stags versus Knights game that tickled your fancy there, Wildcard?
Well, I think the overall result's pretty significant for the Stags to bounce back after losing to Auckland last week. It's they actually go ahead of Auckland on the table now because Auckland didn't get much out, no result against Otago, which is guts to them because that's a game they probably would have won, to be honest. Like, Otago struggled in the first round. They've been one of the bottom 2 teams for the last 3 years. So if there is a weaker team among these, then they are probably that team. But Auckland, weren't able to go down there and get any valuable points. Wellington are comfortably up on top at the moment. They've won both games, and they're, I think, 1 bowling point short of having maximum bonus points as well. So they're almost doing they've almost been perfect to this point. But that rained off game, I think, because it sort of seems to me like there's 3 teams at the top and then there's 3 teams below that. So for Auckland to miss out on points against Otago could end up being a little bit significant. They do play them again, and I was having a look at this because of the stupid thing about New Zealand cricket wanting to squeeze in more 2020s and not pay for longer form stuff. They shorten 2 rounds of the Plunket Shield, so not everyone plays everyone twice. Otago have lost to Wellington. They had a no result against Auckland. Next time they play Northern Districts, and then there's the break. And when they come back next year, they've got Auckland, Canterbury, and CD. So Wellington don't actually play Otago again. Auckland do get another go. CD get to play them twice. So I think Central Districts, they can be pretty chuffed with how things worked out in terms of like going for, they were back-to-back, weren't they? So looking for that three-peat, looking for that LA Lakers, Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls, Kobe Bryant, Phil Jackson, both times, three-peat. Yeah, I think things worked out pretty nicely for them, although I should have looked and seen when they play Wellington, because that's going to be the big blockbuster between those two. But yeah, good times for the Central Stags. They've I'm like you, I'm amazed at how they can just keep finding new players. Like, we can talk about that secondary depth, which is the most important thing in domestic cricket, having those guys just below Black Caps level who don't go and play Black Caps cricket throughout your season and disappear. Like, you have to be able to replace the Black Caps that are in your squad, but it's more than just the secondary depth, isn't it? Because CD and Wellington as well so far, a highlight of both of their first two rounds, I suppose, is that they have been able to. Well, you already said this, like winning games with second string bowling attacks is super impressive, and I'd say those two probably up top of favourites, but I don't want to be stink on Auckland when they didn't even get to play, and they have already beaten CD once, so pretty wide open at the top for the championship, I reckon, this season. Pity we only get one more round until the competition takes a break, eh?
Yeah, jeepers creepers. How about that scheduling? Just finished with wildcard. Barrett Popley got some runs on the board in that game. He hit 87, batting number 3 for the Knights, which is good to see. Now, I think it would have been the 2016-17 season. Popley scored over 1,000 runs and was ridiculous in terms of run scoring. But the reason I'm highlighting Barrett Popley's innings here of 87 versus Central Districts is because 2017-18, Popley played 7 games, 12 innings, and scored 50 plus 3 times in 12 innings. So he had an average of 33.9, which is an obvious dip on his breakout season. Kind of second season syndrome. Wasn't second season, but kind of second season in the spotlight. And then 2018 and 19, Popley didn't score 50 plus at all. He played 4 games, 7 innings, average of 23. And now Popley has played 1 game and scored 87. His last 50-plus score was 16th of November last year. So almost this time last year when Ford Trophy cricket was in action, he hit 67 in a Ford Trophy game. So I don't know what's going to happen with Barrett Popley. I don't know if he is going to just settle into a groove of run scoring and put those kind of cash in on the experience he has gained through the rough periods of recent seasons. I don't know if this is a blip on the radar and he's going to keep struggling at this level. I just really want to see how this summer plays out for someone like Barrett Popley, who burst onto the scene a few years ago, dominated all run scoring in Plunket Shield, and then he kind of basically has just fallen off the radar in terms of scoring runs. He did get an 87 here this week against Central Districts, and just curious in what direction he takes the rest of his summer.
Yeah, one of those guys who's sort of like, it could go either way, which is always super exciting to be able to. Well, it's so exciting to be able to watch and follow. I've been thinking that way about. It's very different circumstances, but I've been thinking that way about football writing about Maya Bevan at Auckland City, who scored a hat-trick in the first half of the season this week. So, yeah, good for that fella. Next week we've got Wellington versus Auckland at the Basin Reserve. Actually, it's later this week, isn't it? All games kick off. There I am talking about football again. All games begin on the 8th of November. Wellington versus Auckland at the Basin Reserve. Central versus Canterbury at Saxton Oval, the beautiful Saxton Oval in Nelson. Otago versus Northern Districts at the University of Otago Oval. Those are all 3 grounds that are fantastic to watch cricket at as well. And, free entry for Plunket Shield games. Get down there. That Wellington-Auckland game is I would suggest pretty massive, considering this is the last round before we get into Ford Trophy, leading into Super Smash, and then eventually we pick it up again with 5 more rounds. What is it, like February or March or something next year for the Plunket? I think February for the Plunket Shield, last 5 rounds. So yeah, this is the last opportunity to put those points on the board before shifting focus. So Wellington versus Auckland, 2 teams that have had good results so far. Auckland will be a bit pissed off they didn't get the opportunity to do to Otago what Wellington did to Otago. Yeah, some title ramifications on the line, that one, I reckon. There could be a bit of a blockbuster.
Could well be, indeed. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Niche Case and the Niche Cast. If you do enjoy what we do, you can support us on Patreon. Straight up the guts, straight to us. That's the best way to support us. Otherwise, just keep listening and keep, just enjoying what we do. Because we ain't going nowhere except maybe out into the sunshine, and just stay beautiful, be nice to each other, and be generous. How about that? Just be generous. Cheer.